and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we're going to introduce you, if you don't already know, to the Peninsula Community Foundation. My guest is Will Bane. Welcome, Will.
Hi, Robin. Thanks so much for having us. We're really excited to talk to you about all the work we're doing.
I am very excited too, but I want you to start by telling us what this organization is. I think a lot of people haven't heard of it.
Absolutely. If you've not heard of the foundation, you've likely heard of some of our projects that we've managed. But the Community Foundation was founded 15 years ago to create a better quality of life for all of the Peninsula's residents, from Hampton all the way up to Williamsburg. We do that in a variety of ways, but the biggest way is that we're a public charity and we manage funds that we then allocate grants from in order to be able to improve the quality of life in a number of different issues on the peninsula. One of our biggest projects that a lot of people engage with on the peninsula is Give Local 757, our annual day of giving where we raise over $600,000 a year for over 200 nonprofits across the community.
Yeah, that's been hard because, you know, we have to promote everything that ties to the City of Hampton. And so we have a lot of, you know, city groups, they have foundations associated with them or nonprofits, and so many charities and nonprofits here. That's a pretty wide net.
It is, and we find that a lot of nonprofits in the city actually are small operations. Maybe they have 1 or 2 full-time staff members, or maybe it's just a labor of love that happens out of someone's home.
Right.
And for those people, we really want to provide support to help them not only build their infrastructure as a nonprofit, but also to be able to raise capital and be able to run the operations they want to without having to spend their entire year asking people for donations.
Yeah, that gets nonprofits down because they're trying to do the work.
That's exactly
and they need
right.
the money, but that's a different part of the game.
Exactly
so
right.
How do you're kind of then an umbrella and supportive organization. How do you determine, there are so many charities and so many needs, what your group's focus is?
We really take a research-based approach. And so we work with city leaders, nonprofit leaders, and other stakeholders in our community, and we try to figure out what are the issues deeply affecting Hampton, Newport News, James City County, and the rest of the peninsula. And that really is a process that is data-driven. We really look not only at what the numbers are saying, but also what are we hearing in various conversations that we're having with people. And from that, we choose some large issue areas. Right now, we're heavily focusing on housing and homelessness. We're focusing on early childhood education, and we're really focusing on neighborhoods now. In addition to all that, we also try to support all of our nonprofits through the Give Local campaign, through other small grants that we give, and also through building the nonprofit infrastructure, trying to provide support and resources for them to be able to manage their campaigns that they're running.
Okay, well, let's take those 3 issues and go a little bit deeper. Homelessness. You know, I have actually written several press releases about what a good job we've done in Hampton and in the region in finding stable shelter
That's
for
exactly
people.
right.
And I didn't even know it was you guys.
Well,
I've been promoting the Housing Crisis Hotline. I did not realize.
I think one of the things that's important to remember is that any of these projects, if it's going to be successful, has to be a team approach. We really have to work all together in what's known as a collective impact model. We have to be willing to put our individual roles aside and come together for what's better for the community. So for the Housing Crisis Hotline, originally that was a program that 4 Kids had been running in the South Side, in Virginia Beach and Norfolk, and it was completely a voluntary program. They would ask nonprofits, would you be willing to get involved in this? Would you be willing to use this hotline and have us direct you? And when we looked at what was happening on the peninsula, we realized there were over 30 wonderful nonprofits just right here in Hampton dealing with issues of housing access, issues of homelessness. But the problem is they weren't able to have the overall effect that they wanted to have on the issue itself. And I think a large part of that was because they were doing a lot of redundant work when it came to case management, when it came to getting entry for people who needed services into their program. And so we, along with some donors and also with the consortium, came together and said, well, what would we need to do to really change the way that people receive services when it comes to housing and homelessness on the peninsula? And with the Housing Crisis Hotline, essentially what it is now is there's one number that anyone can call when they go to any service provider to immediately talk to a case manager on the phone. And that case manager can get them to the best service that matches exactly their needs, whether it's educational, whether it's housing itself, whether it's health-related needs. And we hear all the time from nonprofits on the peninsula, this has saved them so much time in terms of intake. We had people in nonprofits who would spend their entire Mondays and Tuesdays just replying to phone calls, trying to figure out whether or not they were the right service.
Going to phone calls that came in over the weekend,
Exactly.
and those people probably couldn't be reached anymore.
That's exactly right, right? And so what we've seen is that by allowing this central access point, this one entry point into this process, we end up with case managers and people working for nonprofits who can focus on the hardest to serve and focus on what they're really good at.
Right.
So that's just an example of how we at the foundation really try to work in this collective impact model. We try to put together something that involves as many of the members of our community as possible and really create something that's larger than the sum of its parts.
Well, housing is such an important issue because there's no way to solve the myriad problems that people have if they don't have safe housing.
That's exactly
right. If they're not,
Yep.
somewhere where you can reach them and they can relate and they can be safe.
And we see housing often as an entry point to other services. After you have
Right.
housing, we can start talking about employment. We can start talking about health care.
Mental health, whatever
That's exactly
those issues
right.
are.
Yep. It's the fundamental need, though, that we have to provide before we can really talk about those other issues. And we've seen a lot of people through our hotline go on to pursue other sectors of help. They've gone on to get health care that they didn't previously have, or to enroll their children in high-quality early childhood care and education.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about the early childhood years, because I personally just think that's so important. But I think the data shows too that investment in those years more than pays off. You're not having to correct things that didn't happen. It's smart money,
It's
right?
smart money. It absolutely is.
you've looked at the numbers.
Yeah, we did quite a bit of research over the last 2 years. We know that this is an issue. We know that we are not supporting our children under the age of 5 as well as we should. When they get into the public school system, whether it's
that's a big safety net.
that is, it helps them quite a bit.
And there's lunch and there's breakfast if they need it. And
we see, though, unfortunately, that in Hampton, about a quarter of our students never make it into pre-care, whether that is in the Virginia Preschool Initiative, whether that's Head Start, or whether that's private preschool or daycare. They just never see the inside of early childhood education. We did some studies along with the City of Hampton's school division, and we saw there are huge gains just for being in a preschool classroom. Completely controlled for any sort of quality or socioeconomic status, we see that students perform better on their 3rd grade SOLs. They perform better later in life, just based on whether or not they were in a preschool environment. And so for us, it's really important to not only ensure that students are having access to that, but also to find out why it is that parents and families are not taking advantage of these circumstances, and how we can change the way that we provide services in order to increase the number of children who have access to those high quality experiences.
So what programs or how do you work to support?
Yeah, we right now are in the early phases of this program. Last year we finished our report and really have been working with groups to understand the data. It's available on our website, which is www.pcfvirginia.org. And that report is about 120 pages, but we have a nice executive summary that's 2 pages long if you're not interested in going through.
Short attention
Right, exactly.
spans. Thank you.
But what I will say is that we're really looking at how we can make those innovative and fundamental changes. We've been working with Smart Beginnings of the Virginia Peninsula and their board and a lot of their stakeholders to be able to have conversations about what needs to change in health, in strengthening families, and in early childhood education. And we've actually just launched a new fund that we are going to be making grants out of to support really large-scale change in our early childhood system. We call that the Early Childhood Venture Fund.
That is great.
Yeah, we're very excited about it.
Well, I'm backing up a little bit, but explain to me this focus on data. Is that unusual for, the community foundations I'm a little bit familiar with in my old hometown. They kind of operate on gut or what the board people's pet issues
or you want to be
are.
able to make grants to as many organizations as possible.
And so you spread your money. This is a little, it's a different approach.
I'd say that we're not the traditional community foundation. Community foundations across the country do great work. They support nonprofits. They support students who want to go on and pursue a higher education. But what I think we need in our community, given the difficulties that we face and given the unique setup of our community, is we need to focus on what needs to happen to make the most change, to create the greatest benefit. And the only way you get that is by really looking into the data and by talking to people and really having those conversations. Otherwise, you do a little bit of work in all of the fields and you end up with not a lot to say for yourself.
But you know what? That's harder.
It's very hard.
That's a lot
It is
harder.
And,
it's a huge risk.
It is.
And it's a lot of work. And you don't always appease the people who,
Right. I would say that long term, it's less of a risk because if
long
you do,
term, if you can look long term,
exactly.
it's the way to
but
do
I feel
it.
you very much. I often look at my office and think, I'm supporting work that might not come to fruition for 2, 3, 4 years, right?
Yeah.
And so that is difficult. So we do try to have programs that are directly supporting nonprofits in the community immediately. But we think to really have change, you have to be willing to make those long-term investments. You have to be willing to build those coalitions, and you have to be willing to go in it together in order to really deal with the underlying and systemic issues that exist in the community. So absolutely, I think that it would be easier to make a lot of small grants and to make people feel like we are putting our fingers in a lot of different pots and really helping out in a lot of different areas. But for us, it's really critical that we feel like we're getting a social return on investment, that we feel like we're seeing changes in our community, and that we're creating a better peninsula for all of its citizens.
So, wow. Okay, you mentioned a third program. Let's talk about, since we're talking about education and early education, education when they get out of the public school system, because that is, K through 12, or 4 actually now, pre-K through 12, we're doing a great job of educating and taking care of some of the other needs.
Graduation rate is higher than it ever has been in most peninsula communities.
But we know that long-term success tends to require additional education. Maybe college, maybe trades, but you can't get as far with a high school diploma as you used to.
That's exactly right. And so at the foundation, we have 11 scholarships that we manage, most of them right here on the peninsula. We have one for Ferguson Enterprises that we manage nationally. But it's really critical to us to provide students with the ability to pay for that higher education. But that's not enough, Robin. We have to go beyond that. And actually, for one of our scholarship programs over the last 2 years, we've realized that we have been paying out these scholarships, but we haven't necessarily been seeing these students come back to the peninsula. They've not been returning to Hampton and Newport News or further up on the peninsula in order to pursue their career. They're living here, they're going away for college, and then they're going away for a job. And so we really are trying to focus now on how can we improve not only the financial support that we give students, but also really tie them back to this community, because they're going to be our future leaders. They're going to be our future business owners and entrepreneurs. So for one of our scholarships, we've recently started connecting scholars over the summer with business owners and local community leaders for internships.
That's great.
And I think that that really is the future of what we're going to be doing, not only looking at how can we provide the financial support, which is critical and we must still do, but also look at how can we support them while they're in college and how can we connect them with opportunities back here so that they decide to choose Hampton or Newport News or another locality on the peninsula when they come home.
And that's really important too, because I think that supporting them through college, a lot of kids who maybe are first generation college for their family or are struggling to get there and pay the bills, after the first year, they don't always go back.
That's
I mean,
exactly
it is a big transition for a lot of students.
My background is in high school education. I left college and went and started teaching geography. And I saw over and over again students who did very well in high school when they had that support structure. And then they would go away to college and I would get a text message or I would get a Facebook message saying, I don't know what to do. And usually it was an easy fix if they had the support structures in place to be able to say, you need to go talk to this person at your college, or this is the way you need to study, or go to office hours. But when they don't have that support structure, often they don't know what to do, and they experience a lot of problems, and sometimes that leads to them not returning to college. So you're exactly right. And I think that we at the foundation really understand that it has to start at birth, and it has to continue until we get every child in this peninsula into a career, into something that they're doing that's meaningful, where they can have a quality of life, they can support a family, and really feel like they're doing well for themselves.
Well, it sounds like actually you guys are doing so much that we probably can't get to everything today.
Sure, absolutely.
But if somebody is watching this and says, I am interested in helping, what should they do?
I think that the most important thing that they can do is that they can participate in some of our programs like Give Local as a small donor. Every year in April or May, we do a fundraiser where we ask people to just make a small contribution to a nonprofit of their choice. And we see small donors across the peninsula really taking action. So that's one way they can get involved. They also can check out our website and get in touch with us. We're going to need help when we're doing these projects, whether it's on early childhood education or whether it's in our neighborhoods or whether it's with any other of the projects that we're working on. So please check out our website at pcfvirginia.org. Get in touch with us, email us. and really tell us what you're passionate about. And we can help connect you either to the nonprofits that are working on that or connect you to some of our programs that we're working on. We really want to help you figure out where your passion is, both for your time and also for your philanthropy.
And I think that's an important point because a lot of people have one or the other.
Exactly.
You may have time to give, you may have money to give.
Right. I certainly have had times in my life where I've had much more time than money to give, right?
Right. And so, figuring out what is the right fit for people is really important.
But what I will say is that everyone has a role that they can play in this community. And we're really starting this new campaign over the next couple of weeks that we're calling the Imagine campaign. We want to invite Peninsula residents to imagine a better community with us, whether that's in early childhood education, whether that is in homelessness, or any of the other projects that we're working on. And we really do want to hear from Peninsula residents. What are the issues that you're passionate about? What are the issues that we need to change? Let's imagine a brighter community together.
And that, I think, is the key point, too, is that people need to be involved in making the decisions about what happens. Because if a group comes in and tries to change people, it doesn't work. As soon as that group is gone, it falls apart.
That's exactly right.
But if they're working with those folks and the people are helping decide what is right for the neighborhood, what is right for my child, what is right.
Critical.
Yeah. And that's, I think, one thing that's, in addition to the data, that's also something fairly unique that your group does.
Absolutely.
It's a very grassroots.
We really do try to work as much as we can in neighborhoods, in schools, talking with people about what's going on in their lives. Because you're exactly right. The data is important. It tells part of the story, but it doesn't tell the entire story. It doesn't give context. It doesn't really dive into the lives of people who are feeling pressures because of financial situations or because of issues with the economy or housing or something like that. And so it is important for us to take both lenses to look at what is the overall picture when we look at the numbers, and then what is the personal picture when we talk to individual people. And when you put those together, often you come up with something that is pretty close to what needs to happen.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming by, Will.
Thank you so much, Robin. Appreciate it.
And thank you for watching. I hope you've learned a little bit more about this wonderful organization that is a little bit quietly at work in our community, and that you're thinking about what you can do to invest your time or your money in imagining what this community can look like in the future. Thanks for watching.